Welcome to What's Best Forum's Masters and Makers interview series. Today we are meeting Valerio Cora, founder of Acora Acoustics and also now CEO of Audio Research. Welcome, Val.
Good morning, Ron. How are you, sir?
Good. Tell me about the Acora organization. In addition to Isaac Markowitz, who do you have working with you there?
We have quite a few people and staff at Acora Acoustics. It's not as big as Audio Research, but we do have a couple of guys in production, a couple of guys in testing, person in shipping, accounting, receiving. So there's about 10 of us total in Acora Acoustics. That's a dynamically expanding number because Acora Acoustics is a dynamically growing company right now. So as we bring on more and more machinery and tooling, we bring in more and more people.
How did you come to conclude that granite is the ideal material for loudspeaker cabinets?
Conclude is probably too strong of a word. The reason I decided to use granite is because I had the ability to use granite. Same reason that a lot of people decided to use wood. It's not that it was the best material. It was the most commonly available material that was being used to build furniture. So hence they brought it into building speaker cabinets without much consideration of what its actual fundamental properties were. What I did is I looked at the fundamental properties of what a speaker cabinet should be, which is rigid, holding the driver perfectly still and not contributing any sound of its own. And granite becomes a natural choice when you look at it from that way. And the problem with granite is it's incredibly difficult to work with. I mean, we look back and you look back in history, it's the same question of asking, well, why didn't they build skyscrapers in the 1800s, to the early 1900s? It's not because they didn't want to, it's because of technology to manufacture concrete and cut stone and steel in order to make superstructures didn't actually exist back then. So they used wood, and it was a maximum of 3 stories tall, and almost none of those buildings exist anymore. Any of the ones that do exist are all stone.
Isn't extreme cabinet rigidity, though, just an alternative philosophy to, as you say, the more traditional philosophy of selecting a wood for a particular sound and using the bracing in the cabinet so that the wood and the bracing in the cabinet contribute sympathetically to the resulting sound of the speaker?
I guess that's a great excuse you can make up, Ron, if you like. That's like saying, hey, we should take a violin and put guitar strings on it because it's going to make a guitar sound better because the violin body. We both know that's not going to happen. They're purposely built. Now, yes, as a compromise, you take a wood cabinet, you make it sympathetic to the frequencies you're trying to enhance from that cone driver. But I mean, how do you at that point account for moisture and for humidity conditions, which are going to change the resonance of that box? What do you say? It's got to be within here to here, and you make it a floating point or something that changes dynamically. It's a great idea that when you have to compromise, you find the compromise that is most sympathetic to the end result, but it is always a compromise. I prefer not to have the compromise.
Did you design the SRCs and the new VRC model yourself, or do you work with any outside designers, or are there internal people that work with you on the designs?
No, those are all my designs. Those are my designs from the ground up. I do have a couple of engineers that I consult with and friends and people that are really into the high-end audio industry to listen more than anything else. But no, the SRCs were built for me. They were never built for consumers. They were built for me, for my home. After listening to dozens and dozens of different speakers that I always found slight flaws with, or I absolutely loved certain things, but didn't love other things. So I just made them for me. They were never really meant for commercial production. The reality of it is friends came over, and quite a few people came over, and they kept asking me to build it for them. And that's how Acora Acoustics started. It started out of that.
Who physically assembles the speakers? I believe you do it in-house.
We do it in-house. We do absolutely everything in-house for Acora. We have our own machines. I lean on my family's business and on people that I know in the industry to start off with to cut the pieces into the sizes I need and so on and so forth. And then we do the assembly, but that's actually all changing. We bought all our own machinery a year ago or so, and everything from start to end is being all done in-house.
How did you personally learn the technical and electrical aspects of crossover design?
Uh, that was me when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, playing with electronics and playing with speakers and designing and DJing and basically having fun. I mean, it was a labor of love. I mean, crossover designs is all mathematics at the end of the day. It's mathematics and listening. It's not as difficult or as much of a black art as people would think. I mean, the formulas are all out there. The software to do it is all out there. I mean, but it's the same. That's just the beginning of it. In reality, you mean the end? How do we say it? The tonal properties, the sonic qualities of speakers. That's where we start to get into black art, and that's where you need the people who want to listen and make things sound the way they think it should. Which is, we have Warren Gell at ARC doing voicing. I do the voicing for the Acoras. It's my personal feelings of what I think things should sound like. That doesn't always equate to mathematical absolutes.
Well, on that, what is your philosophy or sonic objective of the loudspeakers? What are you hoping your clients achieve when your loudspeakers are installed in their homes?
To have an emotional connection of music and forget that they're actually listening to a pair of speakers. And I know that's a cliche that we hear from everybody, that everything should disappear and we should just be listening to music and artists. And the reality is you do once in a while transcend to that level where you're like, oh God, that's exactly what I needed right now. And that's the whole thing. It's it's the emotional and psychological connection to the music that transcends just listening to notes.
I actually don't think that's a cliche. Some designers say, no, I'm solving for flat frequency response, and whatever that sounds like, that's what I want. So I don't actually think that's a cliche, frankly. What is the sonic significance of the geometry and the angles of the baffles of your speakers?
The weakest part of any cabinet, no matter what we make it out of, whether we make it out of granite, wood, paper, aluminum, carbon fiber, whatever unattaining materials around right these days, the unfortunate reality is we have a cone that weighs in the grams. That's trying to stop the same sound pressure waves coming back at it. Now, in an open baffle speaker, people are going to argue no, because it's going away from the walls. Well, that's not true. It's still going to bounce through the walls and come straight back at that driver. Unless we're in an open field that we have absolutely no sonic reflection, the cone is always the weakest part of any cabinet. So, the cabinet itself, if you're going to use a cabinet, you need to move that driver energy away from the driver and slow it down as fast as you possibly can. Hence the geometry of the cabinet. The rear wave reflection doesn't reflect directly back into the cone. It reflects into the cabinet, into the superstructure of the cabinet, where the rear wave gets slowed down so it doesn't affect the driver anywhere near as much.
On your website, you say, quote, Acora loudspeakers will reveal many things you simply haven't heard before. What you won't hear is the enclosure, unquote. And that's totally fair enough. But then, as you just raised, why not use an open baffle and eliminate the enclosure entirely?
Because in an open baffle design, you have to start to accept that there's going to be a rear wave floating through the room uncontrolled. There's still a reflection point for that open baffle. Now you have 2 points of source of sound coming at you. You have the one from the front wave and the one from the back wave. They're going to be untime aligned no matter which way you do it, because you're bouncing. One's going to come straight at you, and one is going to come, 4 or 5 feet away. So you're talking 10 feet further away. That's all over the place using comb filtering. That's going to be adding in detracting from the sonic signature of what you're actually hearing. That's going to diffuse the image, in my opinion. It's going to give you a wider soundstage and a bigger soundstage because you have sounds bouncing, reflecting. Bose perfected that technique years ago of bouncing the sonic wave off back walls and making sound appear everywhere. Is it correct? If you like that, absolutely it's correct. For me, I don't want that. I want a properly tuned image that's very precise and very tight. Hence, an open baffle will not work for me.
Well, that's fundamentally, obviously, how planar dipoles work. And so now I understand why you don't find planar dipoles convincing. Why do you find box speakers more able to create an illusion of live music than, say, horn loudspeakers?
Every single speaker we build has problems. Let's put that out there right now. So the best way to put this is which speaker has the least amount of problems to overcome in order to give you that illusion of realism and of the emotional connection we're looking for. For me, that was a ported speaker, to be honest with you. I have played with dipoles. I have played with horns. I've played with so many different speakers over the years, but the closest I could get to it was exactly what we have now. It is the speaker driver itself with no interaction or no additional from the cabinet or from other reflective surfaces as much as possible, giving you that point source of sound that gives you that has created the most emotional connection for me. Hence, that's why I've gone down that road.
What sonic differences do you hear between your soft dome tweeter and the Beryllium tweeter? If a prospective customer comes to you and says, Val, how do I figure out what kind of treble sensation I want? How do you guide that person?
We don't, because they sound almost identical.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is that the resistor that would have been put in place with the Beryllium tweeter to make it the efficiency of what the soft dome was would cause more difference in the sonic character of the tweeter than changing the dome material that was there. I mean, the dome materials are incredibly close. I know that they're completely different materials. One's metal, one's silk, etc. And we have all put a characteristic to the sound of what a metal dome tweeter should sound like, and what a soft dome sounds like, and what a ribbon sounds like. The reality is they're closer than they are different. The components that go behind them, in the crossover, the wiring, the slopes of the crossovers, etc., make more of a differential. And what I have found in our testing is that resistors, unfortunately, make more of a sonic difference than the change of the material. So, I mean, we get so many comments at the shows, and that when people buy the Beryllium, they go, I always thought a Beryllium was bright and tingy and this and that. And no, they're not. They can be as smooth as a soft dome. And a soft dome can be even brighter than a Beryllium. I mean, that's a perception that we already have in our minds when we look at it, that we say soft dome being silk is going to be a melodic sound, and a hard dome tweeter or a Beryllium tweeter is going to be bright and edgy. That's preconceived. That's not reality.
So when you selected the Beryllium for the VRC, that was just based purely on listening comparisons?
100%. It's all sonic. So I went through about 20 different tweeters for the VRCs and about 100 different tweeters in the SRC series. It was all really based on sonic characteristics and blending into the rest of the drivers. And I don't care if the materials are paper, wood, aluminum, beryllium, whatever they are, it's whatever sounds the best inside that enclosure.
What is your view on whether driver surface area is important to transparency and realism?
Never thought about that question, to be completely honest with you. I will say it doesn't matter to me what the surface area is. If the driver is the best driver for the frequency that it has to reproduce, I don't care if it's an inch in diameter or 100 inches in diameter. That should not matter. At the end, the sonic signature should matter, and that's about it. Obviously, I mean, the bigger the cone gets, you get into phase shifts, you get into beaming, you get into all sorts of properties because of the physical properties and the weight properties. So that's why you have different size drivers. I mean, the ideal speaker, let's face it, Ron, the ideal speaker would be a hundredth of a millimeter in diameter, be able to reproduce from 10 to 100,000 and be 150 watt, 150 dB efficient. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist. Right, but that's the goal. All the rest of this is all compromises to get to that. Hopefully one of these days Star Trek will happen, and there'll be a little flame or a little dot, and you'll push a button, it'll give us an entire frequency response and range. But until we have that, let's get as close as we can to it.
Have you ever considered making your own drivers from scratch?
Absolutely, and we are starting to make our own drivers, and I have made my own drivers. But the reality is the engineers at ScanSpeak and at Accuton and quite a few of the other companies that are out there that are available to us, they have been doing this for 100 years, and they have a lot more tooling, so they're doing a better job. So for me to have to say I'm just going to go use my own driver so that you can't copy me, that's not what I'm about. I'm going to use the best driver I can possibly get for the job. And if that happens to be a driver produced by somebody else that we can modify to meet our goals, then that's what we're going to do.
Have you ever considered using or experimented with field coil drivers rather than permanent magnet drivers?
Already working on it. It has huge advantages. It also has huge disadvantages. Cost being one of them, stability of electrical being a second. Third, magnetic fields, especially those induced by field coils, aren't exactly that healthy for you, which will come around at some point in time. So you mean there's a lot of pluses and a lot of minuses to it as well. But it is definitely a technology that we've looked into. But I mean, if I get into something like that, it's somewhere where I will contain the stray magnetic field that it is generating for in there, because stray magnetic fields even hitting your amplifier will change the sounds of your amplifier. I mean, that's things that are not looked at. So now we want to bring field coil and put it further away. And now they sound fantastic. There's a lot of incredibly positive things to field coil designs as well. But again, it's what compromises do we want to make and how do we want to make them to get to the results.
When you evaluate and design circuits at Acora, what are the other associated components in the system? Do you have vinyl analog sources, digital sources?
Everything, absolutely everything, from vinyl, digital, from great equipment to modest equipment. I mean, we have all sorts of different listeners. We have all sorts of different listeners with different budgets, and we know that different equipment is going to make speakers sound different. So depending on the design, depending on where they're going into, I try and use as broad of a field of equipment as possible, whether that be, I mean, digital, vinyl, whether that's a $100,000 turntable or $1,000 Techniques from 1980, just to hear what it's going to sound like. It should sound as best as it possibly can across the entire field. Now, yes, obviously you're going to get different results and you're going to be tuning slightly differently. So that's when we have to make our choice of our a couple of reference systems.
What would be, just for fun, what would be an example of one of the higher end turntable tone arm cartridges systems you use there?
I'm all over the place. Like right now, I'm looking at a Dolman with an SAT arm on it. So,
Hmm.
that's what I'm looking at right now. At home right now, I have one of the upper end trans rotors with an SME arm on it, and about 4 different cartridges that I'll play with on that. I'm all over the place with them, and I'm constantly changing and listening to different things on purpose.
I know you just released your flagship. What is the next new product we should expect from Acora? What's going on in your R&D department there?
I have no idea. How's that? There's 4 or 5 projects being worked on simultaneously. Just like the VRCs have been worked on for 5 years. Like, it's not like they just popped out of nowhere and just happened. We have 4 or 5, and if one of them becomes ready, then it'll be released. I mean, which one? I don't know. So it's really an open bag at that point. We have something. People are asking for home theater stuff. People have been asking for subs. People have been asking for center channels. People have been asking for less expensive 3-way. And all these are constantly have been going on for a very long time. It's not. We're usually ahead of what people ask us for, but until they're ready, until I'm happy with them, they're not coming out.
How close are you to a subwoofer design?
Far off at this point. Years.
On to audio research.
Sure.
How would you describe audio research's sonic ethos or sonic philosophy? What do you think audio research electronics are trying to achieve in a customer system?
The same thing I am, an emotional connection to the music. That's why I was so, audio research was so close and dear to my heart, that when I heard that they were in trouble, I had to look into it and see what I could do. They've always been at the heart of what I've been looking to do, which is connect as close to the music emotionally as possible.
During your due diligence process, what did you discover was ARC's fundamental financial problem?
I'd rather not say, because that's putting issues in places where people can look. But the reality of it is that they love music so much, and they tried to develop products quickly, and that costs a lot of money, and it just wasn't there. And a couple of small steps that it was just so close to borderline of what happened that let the truth come out. But that's a story for Trent Suggs, not for me to put out there, to be honest with you.
Was it primarily a cost problem? Was it on the income statement? Is that what the issue was?
Well, you can see what is out there, but pretty much at the end of the day, the bank decided to pull the loan from him, fairly or unfairly. That's for somebody else to decide. But that's why I'm saying it was right there on the razor's edge, where it's really. The bank did what it had to do because it works for its clients. If it would have been 3 months later, 6 months later, it might have made it all the way through. Trent was very, very generous. One of his first programs was to give away remote controls. Well, remote controls are $200-300 a piece, to just hand them out for free because there was an issue with the older ones being in plastic that he wasn't happy with. It was a very, very generous thing, but that cost a lot of money to do. But it tells you where his heart was. His heart was in the best interest of the client. Unfortunately, some of the banks, and that's the way financial institutes have to operate. They have to do it based on a budget line, and the budget line came to a point with the crash of the bank there in Silicon Valley. I mean, that changed the banking perspective of stuff, and I think he got caught up in that, unfortunately.
So whatever was the financial problem, what has changed? What are you going to do to make sure this doesn't happen again and um, get away from whatever problem was at issue at that time?
Um, I mean, I'm not going into it the same way Trent went into it. Let's just put it that way. I mean, we have much deeper financial pockets. We have a target, we have a plan, but I mean, nothing's ever guaranteed, Ron. Anybody can go out of business tomorrow, as you know.
For sure.
It takes very little. You look at some of the big companies from years ago. You look at BlackBerry, they were on top of the world. You look at Palm, they were on top of the world. Both those companies barely exist, if at all exist today. So I mean, the times change, and the decisions decide whether you're going to continue or not. What I can tell you is that audio research has fantastic products, which are very viable in the market. We have the cash flow behind it to get it over this hump, which is all it really is at this point in time. So I mean, I'm fully confident that audio research is going to prosper very much so in the next few years. There's no question about that.
Approximately how many people were working at audio research when you took over?
There were 20 or 21. We're up to 28 at this point,
Mhm,
as of yesterday.
mhm.
So I mean, that's already growing. The sales are already growing. Products are being developed and getting ready for manufacture. And are they going to come out tomorrow? No, but there will be a steady flow of new products coming very shortly.
Are you running audio research day to day now, or if not you, who is in the chair running the company day to day?
I am technically the CEO of the company, so I am the day-to-day conversing with the people at Audio Research. But I mean, Audio Research right now, we have Les and Evan, who are two great people who are co-GMs at they're there every single day. In fact, I mean, they generally show up at 6 a.m. in the morning. They don't leave till 6 or 7 o'clock at night. They're the ones that are actually running the company internally at this point in time. But the company is very, I mean, the people there are in love with audio research. It is the greatest group of people that I've ever seen in a company. They are all pulling for the company. They all want to be there. They're all happy to be there, and they're all audiophiles. They're all audio nuts. So it is the perfect combination for a company such as Audio Research that are there
And
right now.
and what are each of the day to day operating responsibilities of those two gentlemen?
They're the GM. So Les is handling engineering and back end production. Evan's handling the front end of the company at this point. But I mean, they work very closely together, and I work with them as well on a day-to-day basis as far as heading up the company from the financial end and from decision making from Toronto. I don't need to be there, boots on the ground every single day. I do go down there regularly to have meetings, but I mean, it's just like technology right now. You're in LA, I'm in Toronto. We're still having a meaningful conversation.
Many of the top of the line products there are so highly evolved. How do you improve upon something like a Ref 750 SEL?
Um, you're exactly right. You're hitting the nail on the head there, that they are some of the top products on this planet at this point in time, and they're incredibly reasonably priced for being some of the top products on this planet. How do you evolve them? Well, you take out any other constraints or any other stop gaps that are there to start off with. I mean, we have new designs that were already in the works that are actually improvements on the Ref 750s and are improvements on other products. It's just development of time, development of other parts, and having the ability to go through these products and refine them even more.
So I hear you saying that you'll not only be releasing new and improved versions of existing components, but you'll be releasing entirely new components.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, the product will evolve. I mean, the product's been shoehorned a little bit into where other companies thought they should be, and that really squeezed the line. You know, I mean, they're in that. I mean, so we will be developing quite a few other products at this point in time.
Do you have a more general marketing plan to somehow attract young people into the hobby to sell Acora speakers and audio research electronics?
I don't need to target young people to come directly into a core and directly into audio research. To be honest with you, we just need to get people into the audiophile to connect emotionally with music and to love music. I think they will find the products at that point that will suit them the best. And I know audio research and Acora are one of those products. They're not the only products, and they don't have to be the only products. I mean, we are all better when we compete with one another and we hear what do we one another do, and we strive to make better products, to find the things that we are missing that we wish our products had and others do. I mean, getting people into the industry is simply a matter of these trade shows, getting headphones done, getting more affordable systems, doing open air concerts with live music, not amplified music at 140 dB inside a nightclub, because that's not really music, let's face it. So it's opening the avenue so that the younger generation and even the older generation learn to appreciate fine music, just like you learn to appreciate fine wine after you start drinking fine wine and you stop drinking $4 bottle of wines. You know what I mean? It's just a natural development, and we need to work together to do that. It doesn't have to strictly be Acora or audio research. There's a lot of fantastic products out there. I mean, let's grow the base.
When you're not making speakers and buying companies, what do you do for fun?
Nothing anymore, to be honest with you. Cars. I'm into restoring older cars. You know, I mean, that's when I had free time before that. Besides, I mean, I have an IT business as well. But you know, I mean, my downtime used to be ripping apart old Porsches and putting them back together, old Ferraris and putting them back together. Unfortunately, I don't have much time for that right now. But I'm really happy with where I am at this point.
Well, congratulations on all your research. Best of luck with the company. And this has been fun. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ron. Thank you very much.
And if you've enjoyed this interview, please kindly like it on YouTube and subscribe to the What's Best Forum YouTube channel.